In this next tutorial, you are going to be using what are called adjustment layers. Adjustment layers are very important in Photoshop because many of the edits that you may use in Photoshop can be destructive. And what I mean by destructive is that whatever you do to that image with some of those tools is permanent. If I come in here with the eraser tool and I erase something and save this image, it will be permanent. The pixels that have been erased, where you see as red right here, it'll be permanent. You cannot undo it. So with adjustment layers, it's very important that you can go back and change and make any adjustments you want as many times as you want, and it will not be permanent. So to use adjustment layers, you can find it in the layers palette. If you go down to the bottom of the layers palette, it's a circle with a half black, half white circle. Anytime you see any of these buttons that have a little tiny black triangle, such as over here, this Band-Aid has a little black triangle, it means if you click, there are more tools underneath that are hidden. So they use that to save space. Otherwise, you'd have a toolbar that is 4 screens long. So this circle right here, if you drop down, click on it and drop down, you can go through and adjust different things on your picture. Right now, I'm going to adjust my levels. So click on levels, and this comes up. Right now, I'm looking at a histogram. So this is a visual representation of what is included in this picture. This is a picture of a friend of mine. The majority of this picture is this dark background. So this histogram shows a big, steep spike in information, and it goes from 0 to 255. If you've ever seen a grayscale, just like you have right down below, it goes from black to white in a nice smooth transition. Here, the majority is in these dark grays. The far left is pure black, and as I transition from left to right, I hit the middle grays, as you can see down here represented in this grayscale. Then the far right is pure white. And you can see in the histogram there isn't any like absolute pure white, and there's not that much that is really, really white. So most of it falls over here. If you open up a different picture, your histogram will look different. What I want to do is adjust this. I think it's a good picture. I think it has good exposure, but I want to adjust it just to make sure that it can be improved a little bit better. So I'm first going to come in here, slide this triangle over a little bit, and you can see it gets a little bit dark. If you go too far, it's obviously going to be way too dark. So most of these adjustments that you'll do are pretty subtle. So if I slide it from the far left over just a little bit, from 0, right now I'm starting at 0. If I move it over to maybe, let's try 8. Okay, I can also turn on and off the preview to see how that changed. So it's mainly affecting these darker areas. If I bring over the middle grays, it depends on the mood of the picture that you want to create. So how you adjust it depends on the final output that you are trying to achieve. This may look better to you for a certain picture, and darker may look better for a different picture. It all depends on what you want. The great thing is you can always come back and change and adjust your adjustment layers. So I'm going to hit OK. If I look at my layers in my layers palette, I have my original image, and now above it I have this thumbnail and this layer that has levels 1. If I turn that on and off, I can see the original and now the adjusted. So let's say I come back tomorrow and I don't like how this looks, or if I take this image to a client and they want it adjusted, I could double click. I can come in, maybe they want it to be darker, higher contrast. Who knows? Let's say they want something like that. So I adjust it, show it to them. They say, no, that's too much, it's overkill. So I can go back, double click, bring it back a little bit. And get it to exactly where you want. So that's moving the levels around. You can also add in other adjustment layers. For example, if I wanted to adjust the hue and saturation. Hue is the color. If I go in with the master hue right here, I can adjust. These are pretty extreme. I generally don't recommend adjusting like this unless you're trying to do something really ridiculous like make them look like an Oompa Loompa. But you can adjust the general hue. You can also adjust the general saturation. So you can take it down to black and white or add just a punch of saturation. So if I add 15 here on saturation and I turn on and off the preview, you can see that it just warmed it up a little bit. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of adjusting this way. You can also go in if you want specific colors. You can adjust just the reds, the greens, the cyans, blues. If I want just the reds, I could take the saturation out of the red. Whereas you can see she has some red in her skin and also obviously in the lipstick, or you can pump it up. I'm going to cancel out of that. But if I want to adjust, let's say we want to go to black and white, I can add that in. There's different types of black and white. So black and white is made up here with these red, yellow, and greens, and although it's color, you're mixing, there's different types of black and white. Obviously, this is a very different looking black and white than if you were to adjust this red and increase the reds. So this will soften up the skin. There's a lot of red in the skin as well as the lips. So when you increase this red, it adjusts those areas more. Here you can make the person look very, very old. Obviously, probably don't want to do that. But you can adjust the black and white to the way you prefer. So although it is black and white, not all black and whites are the same, and you adjust accordingly. If you're trying to make someone have really, really soft skin, in this case, then you adjust with more reds. If you're trying to make more of like a rugged black and white portrait, you would bring that down, add some more texture to the skin. If I hit OK, you can now see that I have two different adjustment layers, and you can go in and change those at any time. So maybe once I've changed it to black and white, I don't like how that looks with my levels. I want to go back and see if I can adjust it more, maybe more contrast with my black and white photo. Hit OK, and then you're done. That's just working with these adjustment layers. When you save the project, you need to make sure that you save it as a Photoshop document. So when I go File, Save As, this format right here where it says Format, make sure you do not save it as a JPEG, because if you save it as a JPEG, you will lose all of your layers, which is what we just created with the levels, black and white. That can go back and be edited. If you save it as a JPEG, it'll flatten these layers, it'll turn it into one layer, it'll still look the same, it'll look like just like this, however, it'll not have any layers. So if you know that you want to do that, then go ahead and flatten it as a JPEG. If you want the option to be able to go back and edit later on, save it as PSD or Photoshop document.